Hi, this is Joe Ziemba, the host of When Football Was Football here on the Sports History Network. Aside from my podcasting duties, I'm also a sports collector. And as such, I'm very pleased to share the exciting news that the Sports History Network has partnered with Rochester Sports Autographs, the largest JSA authenticated autograph distributor in the United States, where you can get deals on over 30,000 autograph sports collectibles. So as a collector, I was very pleased when I visited the site of Rochester Sports Autographs. The massive inventory is easy to search, carefully documented, and visually appealing. The options seem limitless, whether you're looking for an autographed baseball, signed football helmets, or basketball jerseys, among thousands of others. I found everything from a Babe Ruth autograph, a signed football by Dick Butkus, and an autographed Larry Bird basketball jersey. And as a collector, you'll be delighted with the very competitive pricing on JSA authenticated products. Made possible since RSA deals directly with athletes, so there's no extra markup, and the savings are passed on directly to the customer. Perhaps you're looking for an early gift for Mother's Day or Father's Day. Heck, who needs a holiday as an excuse to give a piece of sports history to your loved ones? Or how about yourself? Today seems like a great day to add to your own sports collection, right? RSA even has film, music, and other entertainment autographs on the site, so there's something for everyone. All orders from Rochester Sports Autographs are top quality and shipped to your door with top authentication and a money-back guarantee. And to make sure RSA knows that the Sports History Network sent you, we created a special link for you. All you need to do is head to shoprsa.com/SHN. That's shoprsa.com/SHN to get your own piece of sports history today.
And what's up, hockey fans, and welcome to episode number 96 of Marty's Illegal Stick, brought to you by the Sports History Network. I'm Scott Kinville, and I'm alongside here the first ballot Hall of Shamer, Ed Stefaniak. I got Connor Weidman, and we got Chris Mazzotti. We have got a full house ready to go today. It is a hockey party here at Marty's Illegal Stick. And, of course, guys, the topics of the day all have to do with this playoff race that we got just going down, and it's going crazy out there. And you know what? I like the fact that if you look across the divisions, other than the Atlantic, there's still playoff division titles to be decided here.
I mean, yeah, that Metropolitan division is going to be an absolute wild card race. It's going to be insane.
Yeah, for sure.
Isn't the West close too?
Yeah, everything is close except for well, like I said,
Like
the
that,
Bruins have pretty much run away with the Atlantic. But
yeah.
But you know what? I'm going to go down the whole list here of you got 4 divisions, right? So you got the Vegas Golden Knights leading with 98 points. They're only up by 2 points on the LA Kings and by 3 points on the Edmonton Oilers. The Minnesota Wild are leading the Central Division. They got 95 points. They're only up by 1 over Colorado and over Dallas as well. Again, another really tight race. Forget about Boston. They've won that division. That's over with. However, the Metropolitan Division, Carolina has suddenly got some competition up there at the top. They're at 103. They're still leading the division. But right behind them is the New Jersey Devils with 100 and the New York Rangers with 98. So, gentlemen, I ask you, let's do a little game called The Worst of the First. And we're going to take a look at all those division leaders. And I want your opinions about who is going to get bounced out of the playoffs first. Now, granted, like we were talking before the show, that whole first place can change tonight, can change tomorrow, and that's what's great about these tight races. But for argument's sake, let's use the first place teams as of today, March 29th. So, you know what? I'll start with me. I'll take the pressure off you guys. I'll lead this off, all right? I'm looking at these, And you know who I think is going to be first? And Mazzotti, you're going to laugh, of course. I got to say, I think it's going to be the Vegas Golden Knights. I think they're the team that's the most vulnerable right now. Say what you want about getting Jonathan Quick. That's great. That's fine. But and I love Jonathan Quick for what he did when he was with the LA Kings. All right. But this is not Jonathan Quick of 2014 we're seeing here at all. And we saw it last night. He got lit up by Edmonton, right? And as it stands right now, they're going to play either Seattle or Winnipeg. And I'm going to tell you right now, if they get Winnipeg, they're going to have some problems. What do you guys think?
I agree. Winnipeg could really give Vegas a hard time. Outside of Jack Eichel and maybe some additions with Phil Kessel and if Pietrangelo stays healthy, but realistically, they're the most vulnerable. You're right. They're kind of in a favorable position right now with that weaker schedule. But then you see them getting lit up by Edmonton, who has their own goaltending woes. It really is. Edmonton's team you should put 5 up on every.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll give Vegas credit in the regards of them having that many points with as many injuries as they've had this year. Kudos to them.
Credits due, credits due with those amount of injuries, but I wholeheartedly believe Vegas is realistically in a vulnerable spot. If they do meet Winnipeg, that's going to be a first round bounce for Vegas.
Yeah. Oh, I totally believe that. And while we're talking about that wild card, looking at that Western Conference wild card, Seattle's in the first spot right now at 88 points. Winnipeg's in the second spot at 85. And then they're followed by Calgary with 83, who's so up and down, you can never tell what Calgary's going to do. And somehow Nashville has climbed back into this, even though they can't score to save their own lives. They're only 3 points out of a playoff spot with 82 points. But I would say out of all those 4 teams, Winnipeg is the one that scares me the most if you're going to go into the first round playoff.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree. Seattle, great run, winning season in their only second season. You got to give them credit, but I personally think they don't have the firepower that that their points show. They're not built for playoff hockey yet. They'll be there. I think they're 4 or 5 years away from dominance if they keep this pace up. But Nashville, they're right in the back of UC Saros. You saw it last night in the Boston game where they beat Boston 2-1. Realistically, it was a 2-0 game. Boston scored 1 second left. But they're really right in the back of UC Saros. If he was on any other team that was in contention, he'd be a Vezina nominee year after year. And Calgary, so up and down, the locker room issues with their coach Daryl Sutter. It really, you don't know what's going to happen to them. I personally don't see Calgary making a push. Nashville, don't see them making it, but they're going to be close if UC Saros keeps up his play. I think the wild card's locked up personally.
Yeah, it kind of looks that way. Anybody else got any other opinions as far as any other teams that could be rather vulnerable in the first round?
Carolina.
Interesting. Very
Carolina.
Interesting.
The reason why I say that is just the Svechnikov injury is so devastating. They haven't been the same team since he's been gone. They've been far from the same team. Aho's played all right. They still have their weapons, but they don't have perfect goaltending either. I mean, who does realistically?
Right.
With Carolina, they've relied so much on that flashy play, that modern style of hockey that is, they can move the puck around anybody, and Svechnikov is the catalyst. Him being gone is the biggest thing that could have happened to them. The worst thing that could have happened.
Yeah. What do you think, Mazzotti?
Well, I think he's right about Carolina. I think they're vulnerable right now, but I don't think they can be counted out until, they fully collapse or something. They still have first place. They have it by, 5 points right now?
I think it's 3.
3 points.
Yep.
3 on the
Three on the Devils, 5 on the Rangers. Yep.
5 on the Rangers. And it's going to be tight. Now, when I look at the top first place teams right now, I think Minnesota, they've been doing well, but can they get beat by their matchup? I'd say for sure. Because who are they going to end up playing? They're going to end up playing either. Is it going to be Seattle?
They would get Seattle as it stands right now.
That's a rough matchup. I don't like that for Minnesota. I don't think that Seattle's a team to sleep on, especially if their goaltending can turn it around like they had for a majority of the season. So Winnipeg is I don't know. Are they trying to miss the playoffs?
You just can't tell with them.
Because every other day I'm oh, they're gonna be fine. And then it's nope, they lost again. It's in a lackluster effort, It's okay. So meanwhile, Calgary goes ahead and wins last night, and now it's oh, okay, it's a race again. And now Nashville beats Boston.
Yeah.
We saw also that coming. But they did get McDonough back since we last spoke, so they got better defensively, and that's a big get back, so you never know. They get some guys back. All of a sudden Nashville's not looking as bad as you thought they might be. So I don't think that's all settled up in the West. I think Winnipeg can slip right out of this. Seattle possibly could too if they don't watch themselves. But I think that Seattle will be okay. But yeah, I think Carolina is definitely. I agree with that. I think they're sus. They got a lot of stuff in there with all these injuries, and you want to go in playing your best hockey at this time of year. You don't want to just fold it in and let's go. We'll wait for 2 weeks to get to the playoffs. You can't do that.
No,
you can't do that. You're going to be
going with a full head of steam.
Yeah, Patrick Kane said it last night. He's and he would know more than most people. So I think won a few cups, and he's been bounced in the first round a few times too. He's you can't just turn. There's no switch you could turn on. It's you got to go and play in your best. So,
is Kane and Taves are they the oldest players in the league currently? With the most playoff experience, I would say.
Could be with the most playoff experience. It would be close between them and Stamkos, Kucherov, Hedman.
Yeah, well, Kucherov's fairly new. He's only been around 10 years. I mean,
yeah, it'd be but don't forget, Tampa Bay was pretty much making the playoffs every year.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Whereas Chicago's calling kind of this drought. I mean, granted, I know they had during the dynasty years. I mean, they were deep runs every year. That's something interesting. I you know what? I'd like to look that up. That's actually pretty interesting. And something I do want to note with that Western Conference wildcard chase is that Seattle and Nashville both have 2 games in hand on Winnipeg and Calgary. So that could make a huge difference down the road. So
for Seattle, definitely. And Nashville, I think they're still they beat Boston last night, and it was honestly on the back of UC Saros. Boston had high danger chances. It was a great game. Fun game to watch, even though Boston lost. But it was just penalty after penalty, undisciplined hockey for both teams. And with the points, Boston can afford that loss and afford that play as much as I don't want to say that. It's true. Nashville couldn't. They made it on top. They got lucky. Boston shouldn't have pulled Allmark when they did, but who would have predicted that last second goal? But realistically, 6-7 penalties in a game, that was really undisciplined hockey on both teams.
Oh yeah, for sure. Connor, what's your thoughts?
They get bounced out first.
Yeah.
I hate to say it, but my Devils.
Yeah, well, we're talking about the first place teams.
Oh, first place teams get my bad. So
you just gave it away.
Oh yeah. Oh, sorry.
-1 for Connor.
Yep. I'm gonna have to go with Carolina.
Yeah,
I'm gonna go with Carolina. I mean, they've been up top all season, right? They haven't changed really.
Well, the Devils were holding that for the first quarter of the season. They were on fire.
The Devils were on a 16-game win streak, and then Toronto messes that up with the refs like they always do.
Oh, here we go.
We got the Tom Brady's of the NHL of the Toronto. So I said that.
No, Tom Brady wins. Tom Brady wins championships.
When's the last time the Maple Leafs won it? Like
67. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Maple Leafs aren't Tom Brady. Maple Leafs are Aaron Rodgers. Are you a Jets fan?
I'm going to say Carolina.
Yeah. You know what? I can't disagree with that. I was talking about that last week, actually. That Carolina suddenly just looks very vulnerable. They really do. Ed, I think you got a real good point with the Svechnikov injury. And Mazzotti, you and I were talking, a couple of days ago. Yeah, they play that style of game that will just bore you to death. Bores you, wears you down, and that's actually not a bad recipe for success in the playoffs. But they're also kind of striking me as this team that they're not going through the motions, of course, but I'm not thoroughly convinced that they're ready for a deep run like I was, say, 2 months ago.
Yeah. Well, I mean, 2 months ago, the Carolina Hurricanes were a much different team 2 months ago. You're talking 2 months ago, you're talking about the return of Max Pacioretty, Freddie Anderson standing on his head every night. You got Brent Burns at the top of his game, which still surprises me at, what is he, 40 years old?
I think.
He's pushing 40. I mean, you got a healthy Svechnikov, a healthy Aho. They have been just beat down. And I don't know. I think those Rangers games are really definitely doing it. The Rangers hammer them every time. Every time they've played the Rangers this year, the Rangers have hammered them.
I agree. And especially
the Rangers are deadly.
Well, especially if they end up getting the Rangers in the first round, that's going to be a tough matchup for them because they just don't match up well with the Rangers at all.
It's going to be a tough matchup for them, but I think that it's an easy matchup for the Rangers. If they
that's what I mean. That's what I'm talking about.
If it's Rangers Hurricanes first round, I'm expecting the Rangers to beat them in 5.
Wow, he's going with predictions already.
Yeah,
I like it. Are you trying to get us sponsored by Caesar's Palace or something?
I would love that. Let's.
All right.
I mean, realistically, Carolina will hold that spot.
Yeah, you're
If they
absolutely right.
go 50%, pretty much the rest of the way. So, I mean, it's just 3 points up, but it's a tall hill at the top. Like for how good. Jersey and the Rangers are playing tonight. Will make a big difference depending on what happens tomorrow night. Is what happens between Rangers and the Devils are playing tomorrow night at the Rock. So if that game, the Rangers win that, the Rangers take second place in a tie with New Jersey. With 6 games to go. So that would make things interesting on Carolina, but. Carolina right now they're looking like they're going to have to play the Islanders, and I think that's a team that neither Boston nor Carolina wants to play right now.
I don't think anybody wants them.
Yeah,
no, nobody wants him.
Sorokin's a wild card. You can't beat him. He's an excellent goaltender, and the structure and defensive style of the Islanders, that could be a problem for any team really.
Yeah,
right.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they play into their players' strengths. The question is Barzal going to be healthy enough for playoffs? He's really their X factor when it comes to putting points on the board.
Yeah, and the funny part is that Barzal wasn't playing well at all, especially in the first half of the season. They trade for Bo Horvat. He finally starts playing well, and then he gets injured. But You're right, Ed, on that one. And let's talk about this since we got a Rangers fan and we got a Devils fan here. Okay, now. If you are the Rangers or the Devils, do you want to play each other in the first round, or would you rather get the Islanders? Because if you get the Islanders, it means you win the division, and whoever doesn't win the division is going to get Carolina, right? So if you're the New York Rangers and you're the New Jersey Devils, are you looking at those standings and saying, you know what, that first round, I think I'd rather get those guys from directly across the river rather than a little bit further across the river? What do you think?
You can start, Connor.
Thanks. See, I don't really know because that's a good question. I'm gonna have to say I'd rather play the Rangers. I'd really rather play the Rangers.
All right.
That's
And why?
how I feel. I think that game's going to draw a lot of attention. If that does happen, hopefully it does. That will draw a lot of attention. So, and
Okay.
I mean, was it 2017? I think it was that they was it 2017 that they beat the Rangers.
Was it? I can't remember.
I think it was. What year was it? They beat them in the playoffs for the.
I think it was 20.
That
What year did the
2011.
No, there was one year that the Devils beat the Rangers to make it to the finals against them.
That
Oh,
was-
12.
yeah.
You're thinking of 12.
12.
Yeah,
12.
2012.
Yeah.
2012. I don't know why it's 2017.
Yeah. I was like, wait a minute.
Wait a minute.
Did I miss a
Yeah,
year here? What's
There were
going on?
6 guys laying on top of
Was I in a
Lundqvist,
coma?
and the Devils scored the game-winning goal. And
Yep.
No interference. Yeah.
But I
remember
really
that.
see that matchup. I think that would draw a lot more people than Islanders and Devils. Or
Well, I don't think you got to worry about the stadiums being filled for sure. That's going to be rocking either way. Mazzotti, you're a Rangers fan. Would you rather get the Devils or the Islanders in the first round? Because you're going to get one of them.
I'd rather get the Devils, but I'd like the Rangers to take second place.
They have on ice.
I don't think it would matter in the Devils Rangers series, but moving forward, I think it does matter. So
All right.
I would like it for the rest of the playoffs, but Rangers Devils, it doesn't really matter because it's a mixed bag either way. There'll be 7,000 Devils fans in the Garden. There'll be 15,000 Rangers fans at the Rock, and it's usually how it goes. Speaking of which, Rangers played Florida recently. I've never seen so much blue in a visiting arena. Couldn't even tell there was. It was just ridiculous to me that I'm like, oh my goodness, why don't they just play the goal horn for when the Rangers score, or the goal song, because the whole stadium was Rangers. They were literally chanting "Let's go Rangers." I didn't hear "Let's go Panthers" the whole game.
Well, yeah, but the Panthers have got to be used to that by now because, I mean, before they had a good year last year, right? It was they were getting 8,000 people anyhow. So I think about it for a second. It's like 20 degrees in New York. It's 80 degrees in Miami. What do you? Perfect vacation opportunity here.
I was just thinking about our division talk last week. I was thinking the owner of the Panthers has got to be how do we get into the Rangers division? How do we play these guys 8 times a year? Because they had to be loving the revenue stream at the end of the game with concessions and the ticket sales. But yeah, I like I said, I don't like the format for this because I think the Devils and the Rangers are 2 fun teams that could be fun to watch in the playoffs. And I hate to think that one of them is going to be gone after the first round. And I don't think it's a sleep. That Jersey could beat the Rangers. Absolutely, they could. But we'll see. I think for the Devils to win, their goaltender they're going to have to Binnington it. Their goaltender Vanacek or Blackwood. One of them is going to have to be outstanding.
It's going to be Vanacek for the Devils.
Yeah, Vanacek will go for the Devils, and that's going to have to be the Vitek Vanacek from the first half of the season, not this current, quite frankly, inconsistent incarnation. The one advantage I think that New Jersey would have in a series, especially against the Rangers, you think about it, they can play loose because the Devils aren't supposed to be there. If you recall, going into the season, we'll be happy to make a wild card. That means we're making progress. Nobody expected this at all. Whereas the Rangers, and especially after loading up and making moves, well, guess what? People are expecting at least a conference finals, if not a Stanley Cup final appearance. So the Devils do have the advantage in being able to play a little bit more loose, which would really help them with a young team. However, that will be a fantastic series. Ed, any thoughts on that?
I do agree with you on the Devils. I mean, nothing's more deadly than a team playing on house money. You got these Cinderella runs. The Devils this year, no one expected it. And I actually have a thought about the Vitek Vanacek situation, Mackenzie Blackwood. I noticed how Mackenzie Blackwood was out the first half of the season when Vanacek was on fire. And then he comes back and, that now they're, just average goaltending in New Jersey. It's nothing to write home about like in the first half. Could there be an issue in that locker room with goaltenders?
I don't know. I don't know about that because, I mean, frankly, Vanacek got them to where they are right now. At least a big factor in it.
I agree.
Not exactly him alone,
but where does Mackenzie Blackwood now stand with that organization?
Well, without, I mean, I'm not an expert on the New Jersey Devils by any stretch of the imagination, but because I follow the Comets, I kind of have a good idea. And I would have to say that Mackenzie Blackwood is probably as good as gone next year in New Jersey. Yeah, you got Akira Schmidt who's ready to come up and take that backup goaltender role. And while Mackenzie Blackwood has flashes of being a great goaltender, he does have a huge injury history. And you can't carry 3 goaltenders in the NHL. You just can't do it. There's no room for it, especially in a cap world and all that. So
don't hold your breath on that, because we said that 5 years ago with the 1A, 1B situation. You can't have 2 starters. And now
I'm not saying you can't have 2 starters. I'm saying 3 goaltenders.
But what I'm saying is times are going to change before we know it, and then all of a sudden you're going to see teams with 3 goaltenders invest in a 3rd goaltender. Somebody's going to come up with that bright idea. It's going to work. They're going to win the cup, and now every team's going to copy that.
But what do you sacrifice? Because now you got to sacrifice either a defenseman slot or a forward slot.
Honestly, because you got to think there's black aces.
Well, playoffs is one thing, but I'm talking about regular season because that's what we were talking about.
They're going to find these general managers are smart. They're going to find a way around it. Cap's going to go up. They're going to say, you know what? Let's spend it on a 3rd goaltender, and they're going to do it.
That's
you got to remember too, like a lot of these contracts that are going with the cap projections, so they may undershoot it. If somebody undershoots it, they're going to go grab a 3rd goaltender.
They could, but I'll tell you something. The problem with how much expansion's been done and all that, if there's one pool that's really been diluted, it's the goaltender pool.
Yes,
there's not, you got 32 teams in the NHL right now, so which means you have to have at least 64 NHL caliber goaltenders, which really, I'm telling you, that is not easy. I mean, listen, no, it's not easy for a forward or a defenseman to make NHL. Don't take me wrong. But what I'm saying is when you have the goaltender position being really as specialized as it is, and especially in this day and age, because now you have to pretty much be the super athlete, right? We've talked about this before. Whereas, 20, 25 years ago, you didn't have to be the super athlete to be the goaltender. You just had to be a pretty good athlete. Now you got to, it's the equivalent in football of say, running the 40 and 4-2, that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
So that really kind of narrows the pool down.
But how many goaltenders are in Sweden and in Russia that are NHL ready? They're just not ready to come here.
There's a lot of them.
Yeah,
I feel like there's a lot more than what we know.
I think that's exactly the problem, though, Ed, because they're not going to come here when they can get a starting job over being a 3rd stringer and making more money in Russia or Sweden or Liga or any of these leagues. So
not to change everything, but if you you got NHL, but then you got the AHL, ECHL. If you look at it, there's a lot of ECHL players that do go overseas because they get better opportunities.
Absolutely.
There's tons of them right now. There's a couple of them that I've watched in Reading. One of the Thunder guys, Jake, I think it was Jake Rysick, went over, and he's playing over there and overseas. Martin Bador's son's over there playing because he was with Reading. He was with I think it was the Reading Royals, and he's over there now playing over. I think he's in Germany or something like that. But
you bring up a great point about the professional leagues over in Europe, because the professional leagues have grown leaps and bounds over there over the past 10 years. You mentioned Liga. You got the SHL in Sweden. Don't forget about the DEL in Germany. That league is growing by leaps and bounds. Of course, you still have the KHL. So the competition for top players, let's put it this way. The NHL still has a lock pretty much on elite players, right? Because that's where they're going to make the most money. Right. But if you have those betweeners, all of a sudden, you guys are absolutely right. It's no guarantee that they're going to be satisfied. Well, I'll go over and be a 3rd stringer, say, on the Seattle Kraken, making league minimum, or I can go over to the SHL, the Swedish league, make more money than I was making over here, and I'm going to get more playing time.
And the playing time is the key, I think.
Oh yeah,
Because these guys need it. They need it to get better. You know, you've heard me say before, you know, stay in the AHL season or whatnot, because they need the work, they need the seasoning, and if they're not going to if they're going to be the backup in the AHL or the starter in Sweden, which way are you going to go? You know, like you want the playing time, especially if you're getting more money.
oh yeah, absolutely.
Like, I know we're talking about goaltenders, but look at Boldy over in Minnesota. Did you think he was ready? And put him back down the HL for a little bit the season up. And he came back up. Look at him now.
Well, yeah, that's absolutely.
Like,
and you know,
more ice time, it helps them. Like, I agree. I'm young. I'm 25. There's kids out there that my age that are trying to get up there and, you know, in the AHL and stuff like that. That's like, they need ice time.
sure. Oh, absolutely.
Here and
And
there.
don't forget, players develop at different paces too.
I think when it comes to goaltending with the third goaltender, the smartest thing, the best thing you could do is something like what the Rangers have done the last couple of years. They see a guy who's been to the NHL. They know he can play in the NHL, but maybe he's not the regular starter or even the regular backup like Keith Kincaid. Then they, you know, last year we saw Louis Domingue have to end up going into net for the Penguins.
Right.
He played outstanding. You know, everybody's been saying all year, oh, they beat a third string goaltender in Pittsburgh. Louis Domingue played his brains out. Like, let's be real, okay? He let a couple of bad ones in, but overall, he was excellent. And what did the Rangers do? They gave him a contract this year. He's the Rangers' third string goaltender. Right. So, you know, that's more the avenue, because I don't think you can commit any amount of this cap going up. It's not going to be committed to a third goalie, because these players that have been waiting for their paydays, they get that money. There's no way, or you're not going to keep them. So you could have 3 great goalies, but you got no first line center, you know. So that's the issue.
And don't forget, you still got Corey Schneider that the Islanders have sitting down in Bridgeport.
There you go, somebody like that, exactly.
I thought he retired.
No, he's in Bridgeport.
He's in
Bridgeport Islanders. Yeah.
And would you want to play him if he had to come up and play in the playoffs? No.
Could you imagine that?
I have a feeling he would be outstanding.
Could you imagine if he came back against the Devils? I'm back.
I think that's what we've been talking about all along too, with Quick playing against the Kings in the playoffs.
I hope it happens.
Oh God, I'd be rooting for Jonathan Quick so much.
Yeah, I know you would. You know what? You wouldn't even matter if Jonathan Quick was playing. You'd be rooting against him anyways.
Oh, he looked terrible last night.
Yeah,
he looked terrible. If you go back and watch those highlights, Quick is not in that. He's not owning the crease at all. He's flopping and flipping. Like, all of a sudden, that little boost he got from the trade seems gone. He's back to the man from LA who couldn't stop anything this year.
And again, like I said, it was so sad to watch, you know, a Legends game kind of drop off the way it did in LA. You know, and again, the way they handled that trade was they could have definitely handled that better, but there was a reason they made that trade.
And, a couple weeks ago when I said it was the most disrespectful trade, that's what I meant.
Absolutely. I know.
He needed to be gone, but like with a legend like that, you give him a heads up.
Oh yeah. Oh, I agree.
I think honestly, LA pulled the trigger too late on him. I think they should have got 1 or 2 seasons ago when they could have got a real big value for him.
The shocker is
it was the contract that was the problem.
The shocker is that they got Korpisalo and Goryanov.
They had to throw in a first round pick for it too, but
yes,
it's working out pretty well for them though.
That first round pick's utterly useless because they're you know,
if they make it out of the first round, it basically becomes a high second round pick.
Yeah. So to me, if Goryanov does decide to stay in LA, you know, I know he said he wants to test the free agent market, but if he decides he wants to stay and LA offers him a good deal, I think LA made out like bandits on that because Quick was worth a lot less.
Yeah, I mean that's and like I said, it's too bad, and you know, it's a shame he ended up in Vegas, but we weren't talking about the Rangers and the Devils. And Mazzotti, I know you got something on your mind you want to get off of your chest, and it was in a game against Carolina. So take us through it. And you know what, brother? Let it out. Let yourself feel better.
Carolina, last week we were talking, Carolina had to play the Rangers twice, right? And the first game was at the Garden. The Rangers, you know, in Carolina's defense, Carolina came out flying like they usually do. They stifled the Rangers' breakout really well. Rangers could not get much of anything going, although they did end up having a lead in the game, luckily, really luckily, because Shesterkin had to play great, and it was Ryan Lindgren's first game back after missing about 9 or 10 games with an injury, off a boarding from TJ Oshie that never even got anything. Not a penalty, not a phone call, nothing. So he gets back in the game. Carolina makes, they dominated the second period, Carolina, but they couldn't get anything through. The Rangers are playing defensively sound. That's one thing I like about them right now, that like they don't get all flustered when a team comes at them hard. They buckle down, they collapse, they get in their position, and they look for their opportunity to transition. Now, it didn't really happen for most of the second period, but they end up coming out of it. The third period, Carolina comes back. They tie the game. The Rangers go right back. It's 2-1. And Carolina comes back, ties it 2-2. And then with like 2 minutes and change to go, Ryan Lindgren's taking the puck. He's got it at the sidewall in the defensive zone. And a Carolina player comes from behind and literally slew foots him. There's no other way to look at it. It is the most blatant, obvious slew foot. He kicks his foot right behind Lindgren. Lindgren goes backwards down like a sack of potatoes. The puck goes right to the Carolina player, who passes it hard to Burns into the net for the game-winning goal. Literally off that slew foot. Right off the slew foot, right onto Burns' stick, right into the net. And I got people on Reddit. Now, I don't like to say the refs cost the Rangers that game, but 100% the refs cost the Rangers that game. When they don't call that blatant, obvious slew foot, that, by the way, Lindgren is now out again and has not played since. There's been no call from the league, nothing. I mean,
and he didn't play the rest of the game, right?
I'm
assuming.
It was only 2 minutes left, so I couldn't even.
I didn't see the game, so
it was only like a minute 50 left.
Okay.
He may have taken a shift or two,
right? Okay,
but that's it. I think they're doing it more as like a precautionary thing before the playoffs, perhaps. But it's a slew foot. PK Subban slew-footed 3 people last year.
Got nothing.
And he didn't get anything. The league had a meeting with Subban about it. Because they're like, you can't just be going around doing this to guys. It took out Sammy Blais for the year. Like, because you're too old and slow to get into a corner anymore, and you're trying to hold a guy and kick at the back of his feet, like, to slow him down. Like, this one was way worse than that. Way worse. And Scott, you've heard me rant about it 100 times. What's a penalty in October needs to be a penalty in May, in June. It's so crucial to this game. And I think it's the number one thing fans hate, other than the blackout rules. I really do. Because
and the Fanatics jerseys. I hate
they've done a study about this. I remember hearing on ESPN years ago about who had the best refs of any league, and the NHL won, but there was a stipulation to it. The literal fan said, except in the playoffs. I don't understand this thing of why when it gets to crunch time, when push comes to shove, the rules just get thrown out the window. And Rod Brendamore was berating the refs all game long. I mean, every time they showed Brindamore, he was screaming his head off at the refs. Did the refs miss like a trip call on the Rangers during the game? Absolutely. But it's not like they weren't getting any calls. It was ridiculous. He bullied those refs all game so that when push came to shove and when there's an obvious slew foot, the refs are too afraid to call anything with 2 minutes left, and it cost the Rangers the game. And you saw the next game. Rangers won in Carolina. It was a much better game. The Rangers played better, but the refs didn't determine the outcome of the game.
Right.
Like I can't. It's like they say they don't want to determine the outcome, but when you don't call the game by the obvious rules, and I'm not talking the ticky-tack things, I'm talking blatant, obvious, possibly intent to injure rules.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot to that. There's a lot to unwrap there. I think for one thing, right now the NHL has a lot of young referees. If you notice, a lot of the veteran referees that the league have retired over the past few years.
Last night, one just retired.
Exactly. So you got a lot of new referees coming in that are, trying to catch their foot. And I'm not sticking up for them. I'm just saying that you have a lot of newer officials in the league now. And I think, to be perfectly honest with you, and again, this is not defending them at all, but what I am saying is that the game has become so fast. And to be perfectly honest with you, with the rules, they have overcomplicated things so much that I think that the refs sometimes get confused looking for some of these overcomplicated rules that obvious stuff gets missed. And if that sounds strange, it should. But if you can follow that train of logic, right? Because, again, take a newer person to the job, overcomplicated rules, quite frankly, I think that they could simplify the rule book and the game will be a lot better. All right. And let's face it, the game is as fast as it's ever been. So, they definitely, by the sounds of things, blew the call for sure. But I think there's a lot to it because you see it a lot at the AHL level as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if you look at last night, too, Derek Lalonde of the Red Wings.
You got thrown out.
He got thrown out because he's asking, what is a goaltender interference? Because it seems like that rule changes every 5 minutes.
That's the other thing. And that's exactly what I'm talking about.
So I agree with you, Scott, that it should be, they've overcomplicated everything. Now refs don't know what to call in certain situations. And I agree with you, Mazzotti, with the plays should be called the same exact way from the first puck drop of preseason to the last puck drop of the postseason. The refs shouldn't swallow their whistles on playoffs. And when it comes to playoff-like scenarios, like last night, Boston and Nashville, Pasternak boarded somebody. Play continued for a solid 10 seconds. Boston got a shot off, hits one of the Nashville players, collects it, and whistle blows. So we're all saying, I'm watching the game like, oh, what's Nashville getting called for? And they called Pasternak. And like, these refs swallowed their whistles for 10 whole seconds. They don't know what they're calling right now. So in that sentiment, I definitely agree with you with the plays should be called from the start of the season to the end of the postseason. They should be called the same exact way. Miss a tripping call, fine. Tripping's tripping. But a slew foot, you could hurt somebody. You could seriously hurt somebody with a slew foot, and that has to be called.
I'm telling you, this was one of the most obvious and blatant slew foots. It was so funny because I was on a Reddit thread about it, and of course the Canes fans are all like celebrating like there was nothing, and they were like, "I don't even know what you're talking about. It. The Canes didn't show it in the highlight reel." I go, "Oh well, it wasn't in your highlight reel. You didn't even watch the game, so obviously it didn't happen."
Exactly.
So
all 12
NHL,
Canes fans.
Literally the NHL feed. They don't replay it. But you can see it if you look quickly at the NHL feed. Lindgren's just stand there and he goes, whoop, just gone. Just just like in the Rangers' original feed on it, you're like, why did he just fall? Because you barely see the other player because he's got his legs stuck out so far that his body's not even right next to Lindgren. That's how blatant it was. That his leg was just gone. It was.
And as a player, I can understand why he did that. I truly can. I'm not the cleanest player myself. Scott will tell you that. But it's on the refs to make that call. It's on the refs to keep the player safe. That's how games get out of hand. That's how you have line brawls like crazy. Players getting injured left and right because you don't protect the players.
And I get what you said, Scott, about the game being faster and harder to call and all that stuff. I feel for that. I understand that. But at the same time, a few weeks ago, I watched them stop a game for 15 minutes. I counted it. 15 minutes the game was stopped while they were looking for conclusive evidence of Keandre Miller spitting at Doughty. Okay? Like, they stopped that game forever for that replay. Like, they went and reviewed that, and it was like, and by the way, there was no call on the ice. So now we've gone back to this thing where somebody says there was a penalty. We go to the review. We look for 15 minutes. We found the penalty. We could kick him out of the game now for spitting. It was like, are you kidding me? Like,
But you can't.
if you're not making the call on the ice, what are we reviewing?
Right. Yeah, and I think actually that review can, that can turn into, how do I want to say this? Overused, I guess. Because you can't have review for every single thing, but something like a major like that slew foot would have been, that should have been reviewed.
But it's got to be called, right?
Right. Yeah,
but the spitting wasn't
put a
called.
provision in where
they went and
Toronto
reviewed that.
can buzz in and say, hey, wait a second. I don't know if they did or not. We'll have to look into that.
Well, they can buzz in. The league could buzz in for goals if the referee.
For goals, I know that, but I thought there was a provision put in for majors.
No,
wrong.
If somebody calls a match penalty, they can review it.
They can review it. Okay, but Toronto can't buzz in and say, hey, you missed one.
You can't. Yeah.
All right, I got you.
You can review it. The ref can call the match penalty and review it to see if it really was a match penalty. Right. If it wasn't a match penalty, then it's not a penalty, or they can make it a 2-minute minor. They can decide. It could be no penalty at all.
It basically becomes a touchdown in football, where if they're not sure, they're just going to call the touchdown, and it's going to automatically go to review.
Exactly.
Or like baseball being thrown out first.
That's better to me, Tom, than letting the game just play on and having a goal go in and having the whole outcome of the game decided because you were too chicken shit to blow your whistle.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. I mean,
because Rod Brindamore screaming at you on the bench the entire game. Like, and there's 2 minutes left, and you want to get the hell out of there. Like,
but Brindamore's still pretty jacked. I don't know if I'd want him mad at me either. But.
No,
I know. I don't want him mad at me either. Oh God, Brindamore scares me through the screen.
I can't believe guys want to play for him because he's the scariest coach in
the league.
Right?
But that's the thing is he was a player, so like he also kind of has their interest in
What's a player? He should just put on some shoulder pads for the playoffs and get out.
He doesn't need shoulder pads. He is shoulder pads.
Yeah.
He needs skates and some saran wrap for his big ass steroid head.
Connor, you came up with one heck of an idea, and I want to talk about it. We were talking a few days ago, and you said, hey, let's talk about teams that need a roster reset. So go ahead and explain that and give us your choice for who needs a roster reset.
Well, I made a list of 5.
Okay.
Like only 5?
You'll see in a second. I thought this would be a good idea because there's potential in a lot of these teams, and like I know one team that is very not happy. I think it's the Philadelphia fan base. They've not.
They just got rid of their GM, I think, right?
Yeah, Chuck Fletcher's gone. Danny Briere and his felons.
So that's my number 1 is Philly. Number 2, I have Arizona. I'd like to see Arizona rise from the ashes one day.
They're gonna get Connor Bedard. Watch.
No, they're not.
They're gonna get Connor Bedard. It's Bettman's baby.
Because if you look at it, I was looking at it the other day. San Jose has a better chance of picking them up now.
Well, I 100% believe these things are rigged. 100%.
I'm willing to bet you that he'll go to San Jose.
I'm willing to bet you that he's going to Arizona.
I will buy you hockey tickets next year.
I don't need those. Buy me a new helmet. I need that. That'll be cheaper anyways. I get cheap ass gear.
But
he likes the antique stuff.
Yeah,
get him a leather helmet. He'll wear
a helmet from like.
Give me another Jofa. Mine cracked. I took a puck a couple weeks ago.
I have Philly, Arizona, Red Wings.
Ooh, that's interesting.
Then I have Chicago, San Jose, and actually put St. Louis. So there's 6 teams.
St. Louis is on their way to a roster reset, anyways.
I mean, do they have any players from the last championship they won? I don't think there's.
Bennington
And Bortuzzo.
Shen. Brady Shen.
Yeah.
Kyra.
But these
Thomas.
Like they do. It's just
so when you say roster reset, are we going full like wipe the team, start from the beginning, or are we going like we could keep like these key pieces and build around them?
I would say keep the key pieces and then build around that.
Vancouver.
So, I thought about Vancouver.
If you can keep Hughes and Pedersen and trade the rest of the team for spare parts and just get draft picks, I would say go that route because nobody else on the team. And Demko. Keep Demko and Hughes and Pedersen, and you could build around that team, those 3, and you could actually have something deadly to work with their advantages.
That'd be great if they didn't keep giving out 8-year contracts for way too much money
to the most toxic players on earth. God, how is JT Miller still in the league right now with the way he's been acting?
I mean, Miller's had a decent season. He's just
he's
being
a garbage person.
It's not his fault.
He's just a garbage person. No, it's not his fault. I don't blame him one bit. I just think if I'm a GM and I'm looking at JT Miller and I hear the stories I hear about him, why would I want to pay him? Why would I want him in my locker room just running amok? And then you give him a letter? Nah. You just flat out said we don't care about this team if you give JT Miller an A.
Interesting.
Might as well put a C on it right now because they traded their captain. I think JT Miller's trash. The fact that I heard he was going to the Rangers, I'm like, the Rangers don't want him.
Oh, he was a Ranger.
He was a Ranger, but then I heard in the trade deadline that he was like, oh, the Rangers should acquire him. And I'm like, no, not in the slightest. Keep him out west where he belongs, in the garbage conference.
The garbage conference?
Mazzotti, got a thought on that?
Out of the teams he mentioned here, I mean, I think St. Louis – I don't think St. Louis can do anything other than put in. They've already kept their pieces. Their contracts they have right now, they're tied up. They're tied up in Thomas and these guys, and Buchnevich isn't going anywhere anytime soon. And and he's played well for them. Like they just need. I think they need more on the back end. They've seen that some of their defensemen over the years, Pietrangelo, Shattenkirk, these guys were foundations of this team. And who's their foundation now? Torrey Krug? I mean, it's not – I don't hear defense first when I hear Torrey Krug,
Yeah.
Arizona and they're perpetually rebuilding. I don't know.
Yeah, they're on the forever rebuild.
Yeah, I think I don't know if they're going to be in Arizona much longer. The way that Kevin Weeks is talking about Atlanta and Houston, I've been hearing that it's not an expansion team; that it's going to be a relocation.
They have, I think, when the new owners signed their deal like a couple years ago, they signed with the league a 13-year no-move clause, so they're not allowed to touch the location for like 10 more years.
I mean, I don't know the details of the contract. I'm sure there's got to be other stipulations on the other end. Like, you got to have an arena with people. Like,
there was just a wrench thrown in that too, because Phoenix is suing Tempe for the rights or the building because they quote unquote stole Phoenix's idea or something like that. I don't know the full details, but I know Tempe is being sued by Phoenix, which is hilarious.
Yes.
The absolute garbage show just cannot continue with that. Just the state of overall, like just as a hockey fan, I look at Arizona as a state and I'm like, why would I want to even visit there?
But I think the two teams that really need to do something are definitely Chicago. I mean, Chicago's pretty much shipped out anybody that was worth anything. I don't understand it. Like, I mean, getting rid of like DeBrincat and Doc, and I don't get those moves.
I didn't understand them
because you're talking
I
keep
get
key
moving them. I
guys.
just don't not getting as much they could have.
Well, you say keep these key guys to move out the other older guys, but they're moving the younger guys that could be foundations
Right.
for the future. So it's like, what are you doing? Like, do you want to start this with Bedard? Is that what it is? Like, you want to get him and then start building? Like, I don't understand it. It's almost like they like, DeBrinket's too good. We need to get Bedard, so buy DeBrinket. It really seems like that's their methodology, which is kind of crazy to me. San Jose, I feel like I don't know what they are. I really don't know what they
I just
are.
watched them for Sutherland. I ain't gonna lie.
What's that?
I only watched them for Fabian Sutherland. That's it.
Yeah, like I don't know. Like, is Carlson going to be good again next year, or is he not? We don't know. And that makes a big difference. I think if they knew Carlson was going to be good as good as he was this year, maybe they would have done more in the off season. But but there's definitely teams, and I think there's teams that are more like on the bubble that need to do these things, like Calgary. Like Calgary just did a whole bunch, and it's like, where did it get you guys? On the bubble?
Right.
Like you might want to rethink like a bunch of things you just did. Like,
I think also with Calgary, like Markstrom's had an up and down year, and that's been a big factor. It's nobody's fault really. I think that they need a coaching change more than anything.
Mm-hmm.
I think more it's like these teams on the bubbles, like Nashville. Nashville's gonna have to retool on the fly. I think they're primed to do it.
I'm thinking Washington.
Kuznetsov just requested a trade, so
well, and he's about. If you look at those contracts that they have handed out, so you got Ovi tied up for the next 4 seasons. He's already 37. Nick Backstrom, he's 35. They got another 3 years of him. Those are the 2 boat anchor contracts, along with, just because of his injury history more than anything else, TJ Oshie. He's 36. They got him for another 3. Kuznetsov is pretty much the movable contract out of that, because they still got him for 3 years, but he's only 30 years old. And I think with Kuznetsov, he's one of those guys who could certainly benefit from a change of scenery, a fresh start somewhere. Other than that, the Caps do have some movable pieces. You can move Tom Wilson. You can move him. I mean, his contract isn't that bad. He's only got 2 years left, and it's $5.16
send him to Boston.
You know what? As much as other teams can't stand Tom Wilson, you'd love to have him on your team.
Except that he hasn't done much since he came back from injury.
No, but I mean,
so then you're like, what kind of Tom Wilson are you getting?
Right, but is that more of a symptom of the team itself, or is it Tom Wilson? Because I will submit this. I think what you're going to see with the Washington Capitals over the next season, 2, 3, if they don't start getting some fresh young legs in there, it's just going to be the Ovi show. Just keep feeding Ovi to get the record, and that's all it's going to be. Because it is, because
that's all it is now.
Right, and that's what I mean. I mean, this team is no longer a serious Stanley Cup threat. I'm sorry, they're not. They really aren't.
They got their cup and they checked out. Same with St. Louis.
It's what happens, right? I mean, you win the cup, and then you got to pay these guys because now they got the ring. They want to get paid for it, and this is what happens in the salary cap world. So,
and Washington pays everybody except for goalies.
Well, they pay Kemper.
Clearly.
They're paying Kemper now, but every other goalie they've had for the last decade, they've recycled out to other sides of the league. Like
pretty much.
So, not to change it again, but Ed, you're talking about the Arizona thing. So November 1st of last year, Bettman said if they do sign, it'll be a 30-year no movement clause.
30-year no.
Imagine 30 years.
30 years.
Wow. 30 years of the Arizona Coyotes. I love the jerseys.
I do. I love the Kachinas. Yeah, those are awesome.
I love the jerseys.
30 years, non-relocation if their plans are approved by temp.
Wow. Wow.
And that's from numbers. So 30 years. I'll be 55.
I'll be 60.
You guys will probably be going to my funeral.
You'll definitely be going to my funeral. Shit. I don't plan on getting past 50. I'm checked out already.
Real quick, around the table, who needs a new uniform? Ed,
New uniform. Oh God, you throw me on the spot like that?
I'm throwing you on the spot, brother.
God, who needs a new uniform?
Since we're talking about resets.
Kings.
Oh, interesting. A lot of people want them to go back to that form blue and gold. Connor.
Purple.
I like to see the Devils change up a little bit.
I'd like to see them go back to the 80s uniforms myself.
I like the 80s uniforms. I'd like to see it change up a little bit. Like some of these teams are like they're bland. I'm sorry. If you watch back in the old days, not like throwing shade at anybody. But
Scott, when you were like 20 years old,
well, you couldn't tell though because all the television was black and white then, so you really couldn't tell.
True. But I like the older jersey looks. I don't like the newer ones. I'm sorry. I don't know. I think New Jersey. I'm going to New Jersey and let's change up Columbus.
Yeah. You know what? That's a real good point. I like that way of thinking because Columbus, their main uniforms are pretty bland.
They're bland.
There's a lot of bland ones.
My 3-year-old can come up with a better logo than that.
How about you, Mazzotti?
Yeah, I like old school things, but old school like 92 is like old school to me sometimes. I really liked like the Ducks original logos and colors. I don't know why they got rid of them.
Even because Disney had the rights to them, but they sold the team.
Even their new third jersey, or I don't know if it's currently their third jersey, the one that's like teal, but it's got the Duck logo. I like that jersey better than the webbed feet.
Yeah, I don't understand that logo. It's pretty stupid, actually.
It's a dumb logo. I don't get it. The other logo was awesome. Like, you're obviously still using it for your third jersey and stuff. Like, just bring it all the way back.
Right.
Because that was a great logo.
Well, you know who designed that logo, right? The owner's daughter.
Well, there you go. There you go.
That answers it. The owner's daughter made that logo when she was like 10.
And I am going to say it right now. The Minnesota Wild need to go back to the green and yellow of the Minnesota North Stars.
I love the red.
End of story.
I love the red. They have such a nice shade of red.
I can't help it. I've missed those Minnesota North Stars jerseys ever since they moved to Dallas.
I'll tell you what jersey I haven't missed. The Buffalo silver, black, and red.
That's back.
Over them out there, though. Yeah, it's their alternates. Yeah.
Yeah, they brought that back this year. I saw them playing it the other night. I'm like, their blue jerseys look way better.
Yeah.
Than, like, I don't understand why they wanted to go back to the black. I don't like that logo either. I think the regular logo is a good logo. Like,
yeah,
I don't get it. I think Detroit could do more. I never really liked the winged wheel. Like they need to do more. Like
I think Detroit's logo and jersey are so old that it's impossible to do now.
Yeah, without having a major to do about it.
I don't know. They had that Winter Classic or Stadium Series a few years ago with the white stripe across with the D. Like that was something. Like I feel like I don't know. I don't know what you could do, but like I just feel like it's really a little tired. Whereas Chicago is really old, but Chicago's like one of the best jerseys in the league as far as I'm concerned.
You mark my words, Chicago's changing that logo in 5 years.
Why?
I mean, you got to think. You had all these Native American things change. People are going to be up in arms about that.
Because you ever hear the backstory on that though?
Yes, I do know the backstory, but do people care about the backstory?
That's a good
Chicago's
question.
Never changing that.
No way. I feel like they're going to. I feel like they're. I don't want to see it change. I don't want to see it change
because that's the thing. With the Native American logos, a lot of people say, "Well, we're doing this to honor the Native Americans and all that." With the Chicago logo, there is an actual story that goes with it that makes all the perfect sense in the world with it.
The Blackhawk Fighters is what
right. It was one of the original owners that fought them in World War I. Is what it was, and it's a great story.
But
that's a fantastic Zamboni Time Machine.
But but like I said, people today do not care about the backstory. They just see what's in front of them and run with it.
That's true.
It's unfortunate, and I love the Blackhawks logo, and I love their jersey, and I think they have one of the most complete looks when it comes to uniformity. But realistically, in today's political climate, I don't see it lasting.
Like we already had 2 sports teams change.
Chicago's not going to change it. They've already come out. They give to plenty of Native American organizations.
They do
have a whole thing on their website about what it's about and how they respect the Native American culture, how it's not about that, and they're never going to change it.
Granted, the one thing I will say is Chicago's recent what word am I looking for? The recent adversities with PR may prevent people from looking at one thing and just looking at the other. You know, with what happened all last year with the
that's a lot of that stuff got re-released when that happened.
Yes,
because you're right. It got brought up, and Chicago still said no. This has nothing to do with that.
And Connor, on your point,
in the front office, but we're not changing the logo.
And Connor, on your point with the former Washington football team and the Cleveland Indians, the Indians logo was horrid. I mean, just for
racist.
That was which, you know what's funny? That was designed by a Native American. back in the 1930s, I want to say it was. And
I mean, maybe time caught up with it then, but
time definitely caught up with it.
Yeah.
And with the football team in Washington, they got that name because their whole team was Native American.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. Then again, back in the 20s, I think Jim Thorpe was on the team back when they named it, and again, time caught up with it. Blackhawks. I'm on your sentiment, Mazzotti. I don't think it should change. I think it should stay forever.
And trust me, I was definitely, before I knew more about it, I was like, I don't know how they get away with this one. It's a nice logo, but geez,
I don't think there's no.
When you see the
caricature
patch on the shoulders that the soldiers wore, when you see the patch that was on there, and you're like, that is the exact same thing. It's changed very, very little since 1914 or whenever that came about. So
I just think that people today don't do their research on things like that. They just see what's in front of them, and they see the name, and they see the logo, and then they see, they just see red basically and go racist. No pun intended. Honestly.
And then they're going to run into a wall of why, and I think that that's good. I think people should learn their lesson when they jump to a conclusion.
I agree.
And then they actually find out why, and they're all right, it's not as bad as I thought. You need to be able to change your mind on things. People, you can be wrong about yourself and have a wrong opinion. You know what I mean?
But nobody wants to be. That's the other issue. Nobody wants to be. I mean, I can tell you how many times I've been that way myself. No one looks in the mirror. No one looks at themselves hard and say you're wrong in this situation. I know there's many times where I haven't done that, and I've been wrong about so much. I just think that people are going to eventually be up in arms about it, and they're going to have to do a hard stance with PR and go about this the right way. They have to go about it perfectly, though. They have to explain everything loud and clear on a national market like ESPN and actually talk about it and educate instead of, no, we're not changing it. Right. Which other teams have done, we're not doing this. Why? And then they just leave. Chicago, the Blackhawks definitely have to look at it and understand that we have to educate people because this is a time to learn.
They have it all on their website. You can find
it. But
I said,
quickly. No one's going to do the research.
Right. You almost have to put a video about it out on on the social media platforms.
Before we leave topic though,
on the TikToks and all that, yeah.
On the jersey changes, I'd like to see Pittsburgh simplify and give me 2 jerseys for a season. That's what I would like to see in Pittsburgh. Okay, I get it when you were floundering in 2002, you wanted to have 10 jerseys a season to sell out because you couldn't sell tickets. but you've been doing fine for over a decade now. Maybe we could go back to just two jerseys for Pittsburgh. Because I don't know what Pittsburgh is going to wear on any given night. It's a yellow jersey. It's a gold jersey. It's an old logo. It's a new logo. It's a yellow helmet. It's a bold helmet. I don't know what it is. But give me two jerseys in Pittsburgh. That's it.
The Canes. Canes, too. Hurricanes, they need to go back to the old ways.
Right.
They wore the Whalers a few nights ago against, I believe.
I saw that. It was pretty cool. I like watching that.
But for me, back in the day.
Oh, the silver in there.
Silver in there, but they also had the flags going around the bottom and their actual logo on the jersey. Now it just says that. Now they have the word mark that says Canes on the away jersey and on their new reverse retro.
Or red flag.
Yeah.
Maybe we should go back to the flag that only had one flag on it. The tropical storm Canes, because did you know about that? They had one flag and they found out after that's only for a tropical storm. You got to have two flags for a hurricane. So they literally wore jersey for years. It was the tropical storms, which is what I think they're turning into going into the playoffs. You know,
that's
pretty
great.
soon it's just going to be a drizzle.
It's gonna it's been downgraded.
The Carolina tropical storms. I love it.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome.
New affiliation coming soon.
Yeah.
ECHL.
Let's get tropical. Well, what do you say, boys? We're going to close this out with a Zamboni Time Machine. The Zamboni Time Machine is brought to you by Zamboni.com, and the Zamboni name is used with permission by the Zamboni Company. This week, the Zamboni Time Machine takes us back to April 15th, 1952. The date the first octopus was thrown on the Detroit Red Wings home ice, which at the time was at the Olympia. Hockey is full of traditions, like fans throwing their hats on the ice for a hat trick, playoff beards, which I know Mazzotti's going to talk about someday. The list goes on and on. But one of the strangest, and certainly the smelliest, is unique to the Motor City. It was all started by Pete and Jerry Cusimano, whose family owned a seafood business in Detroit. In the original Six era, 8 playoff wins were needed to win the Stanley Cup, unlike the 16 victories required in today's game. In 1952, the Red Wings were steamrolling through the playoffs, having swept the Toronto Maple Leafs in 4 games and were up 3-0 versus the Montreal Canadiens. The Cusimano brothers were huge Red Wings fans and wanted to come up with a good luck charm to help their team finish the sweep of the Habs and take the cup. Realizing that an octopus has 8 legs and their team needed an 8th win, it somehow made sense to the Cusimanos that throwing the creature on the ice would get the job done. With that in mind, they half-boiled an octopus so that it was a deep red, and they proceeded to smuggle it into the Olympia for Game 4 against Montreal. The Cusimanos did indeed make their famous toss, and sure enough, the Wings completed the sweep and lifted the Stanley Cup that night. With a splat on the ice, a tradition was born that lasts to this very day. And in case you're wondering, yes, an opposing player has been hit by a flying octopus. Although it wasn't the norm, during one particularly heated game against Toronto, Pete Cusimano decided he was going to toss one of his 8-legged good luck charms at Toronto's Ted Kennedy. The intended target was missed, but Kennedy's teammate Vic Lynn's face was not. And that is exactly where the octopus landed. And that, my friends, concludes this week's trip on the Zamboni Time Machine. Could you imagine being poor Vic Lynn? I didn't do.
How do you smuggle an octopus?
You
I know,
duct
right?
tape it to yourself.
But you want to know what, though? Well, I bet you those guys got through that line quick, didn't they? Nobody wanted to be near them.
Well, they
I
have
like
boiled
that
it, so it didn't
detail
smell too bad.
I like the detail of boiling it so it was red. I never heard that before. People miss that these days. People are lazy.
Yeah,
Start boiling those when you want to throw them out there.
Yeah, they're just splat. Yeah.
I've been to one game. It was out in Nashville, and I saw the catfish, and that was rancid.
Yeah, it's gross.
You know, in the video game this year, when you own your own club, you could unlock different things for your hat tricks. Like instead of just hats getting thrown, you could change it to like the teddy bear toss or something like that.
Oh, really?
One of the ones they have is rainbow trout. And let me tell you, it is hilarious when you score a hat trick and all these fish come flying over the glass. It looks hilarious. It looks like they're swimming upstream. They just come flying over so much. I call it a fish trick.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
Man, disgusting. Like, has to be awful to pick up, but it's still legendary. You go. There's a reason why they have the octopus hanging from the rafters in Detroit now.
Well, the NHL banned it at one point.
Well,
they don't want people doing it.
Yeah.
Well, let's face it too. The NHL is notoriously great at marketing all the individuality of the teams.
Yeah.
Absolute joke of a league. I hate the NHL sometimes. I love the way the AHL runs it, and I love the way the teams are actually able to express their individuality. And you go to an NHL game, and it's so cookie cutter. Like, to me, it's so cookie cutter. It's just the same everywhere you go. And then you have
meter.
Yeah. Like it's just like you go to, like, I love going to Comets and Crunch games. It's so nice because, like, each team is, in some ways, Syracuse and Utica. It's the rivalry to me is real. You go to Boston, Montreal, and it's just another hockey game now. And granted, a little bit of it because Montreal's not so good, but, like, it's like that throughout the league. There's no fire anymore.
Yeah. That's yeah. I mean, I guess so. I guess you could say that for sure.
I think each team has to look at making themselves stand out.
But with the playoffs coming, I think you're going to see some big time rivalries reignited.
Hey, Scott, I was wondering if I could ask you guys a question on the way out.
Sure.
We'll see how it changes next week. Okay. 'Cause it's so close. The Eastern Conference. Who is going to get the last wild card out of Pittsburgh, Florida, Buffalo, or, as I'm rooting for, the Ottawa Senators?
I would like to see the Ottawa Senators get it, just because, and I'll tell you why. Because I'll give you, for a team that was supposed to be still rebuilding, I give them credit for going out and getting Alex DeBrincat and Jacob Chikrin. I'll give them a lot of credit for that. However, I think it's going to be the Florida Panthers. I think so. I think that especially Sergei Bobrovsky finds, he's been playing really good. Don't underestimate a 2-time Vezina winner. I'm telling you. And there's still enough talent on that Florida Panthers team to make it. Now, do I see him getting by Boston? Absolutely not. They're getting steamrolled. But I think it's going to be the Florida Panthers taking that final spot.
For me, I would like to see Ottawa or Buffalo, personally.
Buffalo too, yeah.
I would like to see both of them, because it's been so long since I've seen a realistic playoff run from either of those teams. Like, Ottawa was the most recent, 2016? It's 6 years ago now. That's over half a decade ago. So I would like to see one of those two teams make it, if not both, even though that's unrealistic. But I can agree with Scott with Florida. They're still talented. Matthew Tkachuk has 97 points. He's pushing 100 points already. You got, like you said, Bobrovsky. If he turns it on, they can become dangerous. Pittsburgh, I don't think Pittsburgh has a shot in hell because of goaltending. And realistically, there's no carrying on the team besides Crosby now.
Yeah, that's true. What about you, Connor?
Buffalo.
I'll tell you, I've said this before, and I'll say it a million times again. I'm just surprised they did not upgrade their goaltending at the trade deadline. I'm surprised. I mean, I love the name Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. I think it's a great name. But by the time Devin Levi got there, it's almost too little too late. And a kid coming out of college, you're going to depend on him to carry you into the playoffs. I don't know. I would have just, again, hindsight's 2020, but they have enough prospects and they have enough picks to have been able to make a deal to just get somebody. You don't need an all-star goaltender, just another veteran presence in there to.
You also have to look at this too with Buffalo. They're leaps and bounds above what I expected.
Oh, sure they are.
Granted, this has been 11 years in the making now,
right?
Going on 12, so they're far behind the 8 ball, but we've also kind of expected them to be this far behind so many times before. The fact that they're now pushing, it's like, oh wow, okay, it's the redheaded stepchild's finally doing something.
Right.
So I'm impressed with the way they've been playing, and I think that they're starting to realize, don't rush it.
Well, I'll tell you what. If they don't make it this year, Buffalo and Ottawa are definitely playoff teams next year.
Yeah.
I could see that.
For sure.
We'll see.
For sure. I obviously anything can happen. You're right.
I would say Ottawa. I don't know about Buffalo. I never count on Buffalo
I'm-
for anything.
I'm convinced on Buffalo. I am. But
I said that a couple weeks ago about Buffalo,
yeah.
and I'm gonna stick with Buffalo.
They can do it just as much as anybody, really. I mean, they've got the talent to do it.
Ottawa and
I just
same amount of points right now. They're both 77 points.
yeah, their defense though just makes me nervous, and I'm believing in them to make the playoffs. But hey,
I mean, they could
things happen.
They could put the puck in the net, though.
Boy, they sure can.
I think they're second in the league in goals scored.
Yeah, they're like the old Edmonton Oilers. You know, they got to score 8 goals a game because they're giving up 7. You know. But I'll tell you what, though, doesn't that make for exciting hockey?
Love it. Absolutely love it.
The fire wagon hockey of old. You gotta love it. All right, fellas. Well, that was a great show. And, next week when we come back, we're going to be even closer to that playoff picture. And I'm sure we're going to have a couple other topics to come up with here to tickle your hockey brain, if you will. So thank you for listening, everybody. We appreciate it. Please subscribe to our show on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Help us grow this show and never miss an episode. So for all of us here at Marty's Illegal Stick, thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.
Bye.
Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, a.k.a. the Football History Dude, and I hope that you enjoyed this recent episode presented by the Sports History Network and were able to learn some good old-fashioned sports history knowledge nuggets. I started the Sports History Network back in 2020 with the mission to help podcasters find a community of like-minded sports history nerds, as well as helping aspiring podcasters to start their own shows. We have a little bit over 30 shows on the network right now covering all sorts of sports history, but as far as I'm concerned, we're just at the toothpick in the ocean moment, that can't even figure it out because there's so much more coming. We wanted to create the ultimate headquarters for sports yesteryear, starting with Podcast Network and our website, but we're going to continue to move into other mediums as well. And here's the cool part, because we want you to be part of our team. So if you're interested in starting your own podcast, or maybe being a guest on one of our shows, or who knows, maybe even writing an article for us over on the website. Seriously, all you gotta do is reach out to us on the contact page over at sportshistorynetwork.com. You can be as technologically savvy as a Neanderthal tapping on a stone trying to figure out this whole hieroglyphics thing back in the day. Again, it doesn't matter, because even if you don't understand the whole podcast space, we have a production team that can pretty much help you out with doing everything. All you gotta do, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com, head to the contact page, fill it out. That message goes right to me, and I'll reach out to you as soon as I can. But for now, dude, I'm through if you're through.